Has there ever been a game as amazing and simultaneously frustrating as Mario Party? Since this series' inception, it has brought friends together and then tore them apart, probably because of some bullshit Chance Time or Grand Theft Star. Much like Monopoly, this board game gone virtual has thrived on the thrill of competition, friendship, and the inevitable rise of betrayal. While the series has had mostly a homogeneous DNA throughout the years, each game has its distinct flavor of fun and fury. Think of it less like the difference between Lay's and Doritos, but more like the difference between Lay's and barbecue Lay's. But with Super Mario Party Jamboree just releasing recently, I figured now would be an excellent time to go through and look at each game in the series and see which one deserves bonus stars or not. So, as you've gathered from the title, I'm going to rank every Mario Party with some modifications, of course. And by modifications, I just mean I'm going to be sticking to the Mario Parties that are on home consoles. Therefore, I'm going to leave out the DS entries, mainly because I not only didn't play these, but if I did, I had no friends to play with anyhow. So we're essentially going to cover 1 through 10 Superstars, and Jamboree. So I guess now all that's left is to roll and see who goes first. Yeah, no surprise there. Most Mario Party games operate with a very simple formula. Roll the dice, do board activities, and then run up a minigame. This is the first game in the series to try and refresh that blueprint, but in my opinion, they f***ed this all up. I have played this game a total of 1 time, and we couldn't even get through the whole game. The way this game operates is by having everyone move to the same space by riding together in a vehicle and collecting mini-stars. This makes the typical board gameplay more annoying because not only are you relying on the people you're supposed to be competing against to get to important spaces, but it feels way more RNG reliant in a game that already heavily focuses on RNG mechanics. The minigames were kind of weak and felt like they didn't even matter in the grander scheme of things too, which is a killer in a series that relies on minigames to break up the board gameplay. You know, maybe this game is kind of fun on the surface, but it's buried under a dumpster fire of f***ery. It was so bad, there was a large number of people who forgot about this game, which is a testament to its poor quality considering it was released on a console that sold as much as it did. Speaking of disappointing releases, this may be one of the most disappointing releases of any game I've ever played. Not only was it disappointing because it was a heaping pile, but because it was released a day before my birthday, cementing its disappointment. This game was released to some intense fan backlash due to its lack of content on launch. The game launched with only 4 boards, a rhythm game, and a co-op raft mode, similar to Bowser mode in Mario Party 10. Not only was the lack of content heartbreaking, but some of the new gameplay mechanics were asinine switch-ups. The custom dice block mechanics fucking suck. I don't know what the point of this was, because the whole point of picking a character in Mario Party is essentially just to pick a piece for the board. Imagine if you were playing Monopoly and the thimble let you get an extra $10 for hitting a random number on the die. Like, why would I pick someone like Bowser, who has a super inconsistent dice block, as compared to Luigi, who has a rather consistent dice block? It became almost an unspoken rule to not use these because they kinda suck and ruin the fun. The ally system is also super busted and is pretty much the meta for winning the games because they add to your dice roll and can even participate in certain minigames. Stars being only 10 coins is kind of fucked too because it only takes 1 minigame to earn a star, which makes the minigames mean a whole lot less. Additionally, each minigame has a first, second, and third place system that still allows you to get coins despite performing poorly in said minigame. The 4 boards are quite uninspired and lack the depth that the other boards in previous games have. And speaking of uninspired, I know no one wants to hear some random dude bitch about the UI in a Mario Party game, but I hate how sterilized this UI is. It feels so bland and doesn't stand with Mario Party's core values. This isn't a huge deal, like, sure you get the same information, but it feels like I'm playing Square Enix's new shitter JRPG rather than a Mario Party game. If this were the only issue the game had, I'd let it slide. But subtle details like this make you subconsciously hate this game. As for the raft mode, this is fun, but also has its own set of grievances. To start, there's only 1 map per se, with varying sections that require different strategies. But ultimately, you're just fucking paddling away. The other issue I have is the seemingly low amount of minigames that the section has, to the point where if you play the mode once, you will not only play every minigame, but you will probably repeat 1 or 2 of them in a single run, which is rather stupid. The rhythm games section is also alright, but once you've played it once, you've kinda played it all, and that's kinda what you can consider this whole game. If you played it once, you've played everything. As far as Mario Party 10 goes, my opinions here are more just mid rather than disappointed. Like, we all knew going into this game that it was gonna be rough, but the Bowser mode makes this game worth more than just throwing it in the trash. Bowser mode kinda gives this game a little juice that the last two games I mentioned don't get. Genuinely, the biggest sin of this game is how unbelievably boring it is. They doubled down on the car mechanic from Mario Party 9 because that was just a smashing success with fans. The boards are pretty uninspired, the minigames are simply okay, and the Bowser mechanics can feel unbalanced for both sides at times. This game is genuinely more steamroll heavy than a match of Overwatch 2. I never played the amiibo mode, but from researching it, it seems like this mode was also a swing and a miss with fans, which is rough for a game with as little content as a game like this. I don't understand why you'd play this or 9 when 8 is a game that can be played on the Wii U and is just so much beefier than this or Mario Party 9. As is with every video where I talk about a long-running series, Mario Party 1 ranks this low just because of how outdated it is. But as always, there is a certain level of respect you have to give the game for starting a series that I and many others hold so dearly in their hearts. If it weren't for Mario Party 1, I wouldn't have gotten the other entries in the series that I have such a fondness for. The appreciation I have for this game, though, is tremendous, simply because it's so unabashedly mean-spirited for a game that has the word party in the title. But as compared to newer entries, as is with any series, the boards, minigames, and other gameplay mechanics pale in comparison to what we would end up receiving in the future. But quite honestly, for Nintendo's first foray into a board game series, this isn't all that bad, and is still worth returning to for nostalgia and chaos purposes. This game is unfair, and is not properly balanced, especially when it comes to the star reward system. You are going to get punished, you're gonna get betrayed, and you are going to be an inconsolable mess by the end of it. But you're also gonna laugh. You're gonna look at your friends with fury in their eyes and have the biggest grin on your face while you ruthlessly rob them of everything they have. And honestly, to me, that is the most beautiful thing you could ask for in any video game. So, thank you, Mario Party 1. In my opinion, this is the beginning of the golden era of Mario Party, but Mario Party 4 has some underlying issues that keep it from going much higher up the list. For it being the first Mario Party to make it onto the incomparable GameCube, this game does feel stuck in its N64 ways. To start, the boards here still feel a bit flat. Most of these boards feel too similar thematically and all have this weird metallic motif. Rather than the boards having different interesting gameplay change-up, they're kinda just backdrops to the board gameplay. This game also features some of the best minigames in the series to this day, but also features some minigames that give me Crohn's disease. Furthermore, upon researching, there are fewer minigames available for the team minigames than in previous titles, which normally wouldn't be an issue for me if they were quality. But having fewer minigames puts a larger focus on their quality, which is detrimental to the overall experience. One of my biggest gripes about this game, though, is the mushroom gimmick. They really pushed this mega and mini mushroom gimmick hard, but it was implemented so poorly. Sure, these are useful items that have a purpose in the game, but they force them upon you. There are several mushroom spaces on the board, and if you land on one of them, they force it onto you because you can't swap or discard items, so you have to use it. If you somehow get unlucky enough to have 3 in your inventory, you have to use them, or else you can't buy other items from the shop. Overall, this game is a great start to the GameCube era of Mario Party, but has a few too many issues to positively compare it to the other games on the system, or the series in general. This is probably where people will start leaving the pissy comments, but I think this game's impact is way overstated. In terms of the Switch Mario Party games, this one is pretty good, but in the grander scheme of Mario Party, this one is just simply fine for me, and not deserving of all the hype that it received. I have a couple little nitpicks with this game, but honestly, my biggest complaint is with the board selection. These are some of the more simple boards, so the engagement with them is pretty low, and instead of recapturing the charming N64 style and aesthetic, they stick to the generic Switch Mario style, which honestly I don't love all that much. The minigame selection is great though, and I do love a good majority of them. I'm really glad they even brought back the infamous tug of war minigame that is responsible for holes being created in the hands of hundreds of thousands of children who played the original. But for all of the great minigames we got in Mario Party Superstars, why did we only get 5 dual minigames? This is a major oversight that I never see anyone talk about. There is a litany of amazing dual minigames across the entire series, so why did we only include 5 here? Speaking of nitpicking, some of the items are obnoxious and make the game unfun and annoying, specifically the chomp call item. And finally, the stupid reactions that I can't turn off. I swear on Rosalina herself that if I have to hear f***ing wheat one more time, I'm gonna lose my f***ing mind. Mental breakdown aside, this game is good and revived the series after such a disappointing start to the Switch Mario Party generation. But I think saying that this game brought us back to a golden age of Mario Party is kinda giving the game more credit than it deserves. Finding itself in the middle of the pack is Mario Party 5, and it's funny because that is exactly how I feel about it. It's genuinely the most straightforward game in the series. Not really any new gimmicks here to talk about, so it's kinda just a standard Mario Party experience, which helps and hurts the game. Mario Party 5 is the only game in the series that doesn't really have its own identity. It's kind of just Mario Party 4 again, which isn't a bad thing at all. Despite my issues with 4, it's still a super fun game, as is 5. I did appreciate the presentation of this game the most. Every board has a dream vibe to it, which is pleasing to look at. Plus, we have another great batch of minigames here that are all fun, but if I have to bitch about the minigames, I think there are way too many mashing minigames here. Nothing wrong with that for me, as I received the moniker crack hands in college because of how unbelievably good I am at mashing, but it does dampen the overall experience. While we're bitching, I do want to complain about the orb system, which is this game's Achilles heel. In lieu of your typical item shops, we now get orb dispensers that give you a random item that you can not only land on yourself, but also cost coins to use. So you can get items that give you 10 coins, but also 10 coins to use. So why the f would I use that? The capsules are objectively poorly designed and really bring this game down. But despite all that, this game is still a riot and is great for a lot of funny moments, as is any Mario Party. Since this game came out so recently, it is a bit difficult for me to compare this game to the others that have been out for years, so there is a chance I could end up liking or disliking this game more. But for now, this is where I feel it deserves to be. Jamboree had a lot of ground to make up after the very disappointing Super Mario Party and underwhelming Mario Party Superstars. And for the most part, I think it did a decent job, but did fail in a couple of places. Starting off, I think this is the most interesting map selection we've had in a while. The car map is a pretty fun time and kinda plays into a speed style of gameplay, and the mall is also pretty fun too and leans into a shopping mentality. This one really does feel like a spiritual successor to Coconut Mall from Mario Kart Wii. I also love a good amount of the minigames here. There's a great mix of bullshit and actual skill-based minigames, which is exactly what I want out of a Mario Party game. Furthermore, I do also appreciate the amount of content they're giving us here on launch. I think this is truly them trying to rectify their mistakes with Super Mario Party, and for that, I give them a lot of credit. There's a ton here to do, from the regular party mode, to random online matchmaking, to pro modes, to a rhythm mode, and tons more. But this game also comes with its own set of grievances that are difficult for me to look past. First and foremost, the game, to me, feels unbearably slow. I feel like you sit behind animation after animation that pads out an unnecessary amount of runtime. For example, a 15-turn online game with randoms took me almost 2 entire hours to complete, when in the old games, that time would most likely be cut in half. It really does feel like they aren't respectful to the player's time. For example, I like the buddy system in this game. It's a hell of a lot less busted than Super, but the buddy minigames take forever. I remember doing a full game of pinball for an entire minute. There was also a buddy that had like 9 different rounds of minigames, and it repeated like 2 or 3 of them, which was super frustrating. This game also uses the same art style from Super and Superstars, plus the same boring-ass corporate-coded UI that makes me want to puke and spit. Additionally, the rhythm game isn't new or different and is straight up ripped out of Super Mario Party. Normally, this would be totally fine because I enjoy how much it takes from games like Rhythm Heaven Fever, but I think they surely should have shaken up the gameplay, or rather tried something entirely different here. To surmise, I did enjoy this game, and I think it's a huge step in the right direction for the Mario Party series, but they still need a bit of fine-tuning in certain areas to really hit like they used to. And also, while writing this, I realized I am a 25-year-old man bitching about Mario Party games to an audience of mostly strangers. Damn. Finishing off the GameCube era of Mario Party is Mario Party 7, and I think this is a great send-off, all things considered. I think this is a high for the series in terms of board aesthetics, plus each board has a gimmick that is very enjoyable to play through. This is also the start of one of my favorite board gimmicks in the series, which is a Monopoly Hotel gimmick on Windmillville that would then make its way back to Mario Party in Mario Party 8. I loved the strategy you had to play with these types of boards, rather than the star randomizing its location after being purchased. The biggest gimmick this game leans into onto is the GameCube microphone. Honestly, you would think this wouldn't work at all given Nintendo's track record with useless, stupid accessories like this, but unironically, this works surprisingly well here. But if I'm being honest, it's really only good for a little point and, oh, that's kinda neat, rather than a gameplay mechanic you'll use often. As far as minigames go, yeah, these ones are pretty good for the most part. Definitely not my favorite from the GameCube era, but definitely a big step up from 4 and 5. Plus, a heavier amount of dual minigames, which always end up being some of my favorites in the series. But as far as my bitching with this game goes specifically, my only complaint is with Bowser. For some reason, Mario Party 7 is the only Mario Party with a final boss. The Bowser meter is super unbalanced and is honestly some kind of f***ed up torture porn. These Bowser minigames are cruel and unusual forms of punishment. They are genuinely some of the most barbaric minigames in the series and are up, but also really in line with Mario Party's core values. So you win some, you lose some. But in the grander scheme of things, this was a great send-off to the GameCube Mario Party era, but sometimes can be a pain in the gonads when dealing with Radon. I mean Bowser. This is where we're gonna start getting into the heavy hitters, and genuinely I think this is quite possibly the most underrated Mario Party experience. As Mario Party 7 was the GameCube era send-off, Mario Party 3 was the send-off for the second strongest era in the Mario Party tridosology, the N64 era. I really do love the toy box aesthetic this game provides, making it feel like an actual board game you can play. This game puts their chips into board activities, like the item minigames, that keep the board more interesting to pay attention to than in the other N64 entries. This makes the board strategies a little more fleshed out rather than just a random fest. It's kind of what I love about this game the most. Usually Mario Party kind of just decides who is gonna win and absolutely fillets the fuck out of them until the end of the game, leaving the other players to scratch and claw for bonus stars. But in this game, leads can radically shift every few turns, making it way more interesting round to round. Bar none, this is the fastest and most chaotic Mario Party to date. In terms of minigames, these are some of the very best in the series, still. Lots of classics here from Aces High to Snowball Summit. These minigames truly are the perfect mix of bullshit and true skill. Mario Party 3's impact, I believe, is really understated. It added so many things into the game that would then become staples in the series later on. Great game, and a valiant send-off for the N64 Mario Party era. While we are on the topic of the N64 era, let's talk about a fan-favorite Mario Party, Mario Party 2. Despite lacking the chaos of Mario Party 3, 2 brings a lot of new features to the series that make this game feel more full than the other N64 titles. This game is a bit slower than your typical Mario Party, but definitely not in a bad way like Jamboree. This game offers intense strategy due to the addition to random item spaces and bonus stars. Some of the items are definitely unbalanced, like the magic lamp, which is obviously just an expectation with the series, but having the items being there just reduces the limited agency you had in Mario Party 1. This is a game of mental war. You really have to strategize your future turns and try to turn your friends against each other rather than targeting you. This is also one of the most accessible Mario Party games, surprisingly enough. Thanks to its board and minigame simplicity, it makes it way easier for non-Mario Party veterans to hop into the game and have a fair shot of walking away with first place. Because of the accessibility, this game does flounder in board mechanics, as most of them are pretty much just a straightforward Mario Party board. This game also introduces another series staple in the form of battle and duel minigames that, as I mentioned earlier, are always some of my favorite minigames in the series. This is easily one of the most classic Mario Party games, and definitely what most everyone thinks of when you bring the series up. When people think of Mario Party on the Wii, I can personally guarantee you that this is what they're thinking of. I was a bit skeptical going into this game because the motion control era of Nintendo always brings on a certain level of bullshit, but I think it works perfectly here. Mario Party 8 for sure has its nostalgic purposes for me and is probably one of the most unpolished and ugliest Mario Parties in the series in terms of art style and aesthetic. But the game makes up for it with solid minigames, fun gimmicks, and some of my favorite boards in the series. This game does have the good fortune of being in the same category as Mario Party 9 and 10, but I think it still stands independently as one of the best in the series. To start with the strongest parts of the game, let's discuss the boards. Whilst researching for this video, I've seen some unfortunate discourse about the board quality, but I think they're fantastic here. There's a solid mix of simple, complex, and interesting. I love the Koopa Tycoon Town board because it takes the formula for Windmillville and brings it back in full force. Like I said earlier, I love these types of boards because they offer a really fun and interesting mix-up to the typical Mario Party recipe. I loved Boo's Haunted Mansion as well because of how much RNG provides in an already RNG-reliant video game. And then there's the Donkey Kong map, which I think is one of the better of the straightforward Mario Party maps. The minigames here are probably the biggest issue of this game, relying on sometimes inaccurate motion controls that can sometimes make minigames feel out of your control, like the clock hand minigame. But otherwise, I think most of these minigames are pretty fun, like the soda minigame. Fellas. But I do think only having 5 battle minigames is a crime that is not often enough addressed when discussing this game. But besides the minor complaints, this is a fantastic Mario Party experience, and is one of the last Mario Party games where it felt like Nintendo actually gave a f*** about the series. The funny thing about Mario Party is how similar the fanbase is to Pokemon, where whatever game you grew up with is most likely gonna be your favorite. And wait, when did this come out? Yep, that makes sense. Being positioned in the GameCube era of Mario Party, this game was always destined to be a hit, especially because it was positioned in the middle where they were most poised to make a classic. And that's exactly what they did here. The boards here are simply the best in the series in terms of gameplay and aesthetic. They're all so fun to play on and have a very defined look that helps them stand out from the other games in the series. Boards like Castaway Bay, Fair Square, and my favorite Mario Party board ever made, Snowflake Lake. The day and night cycle made board gameplay way more intriguing by switching up the gameplay mechanics depending on whether it was day or night. And speaking of board mechanics, they also fixed the orbs that were broken in 5 so that using them actually made sense. This is by far the least unfair Mario Party and truly requires playing with some actual agency rather than leaving the game up to luck. The minigames here are also winners. There are so many bangers and make you feel genuinely excited to play the minigames in between the board activities. This game is such a fucking classic. It is so much fun, and it's responsible for a lot of my gaming memories playing this with my friends and family, cementing it as my single favorite Mario Party in the series. To tie everything together in a nice neat bow, you know, writing this video has been really difficult to say the least, simply because these games all operate pretty similarly, but have minor differences. When you play a Mario Party game, you kinda know what you're getting into, but as is with any ranked video, this is a subjective list and purely based on my personal opinion and enjoyment with each game. As I said, it kinda runs on the whichever one you grew up with is your favorite formula, so why don't you guys roll your way into the comments and tell me what Mario Party game you grew up with, and why Mario Party 9 sucks ass.